Sometimes life just throws you a curveball. Or maybe it's not even a curveball. It's like the whole game changes.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a big relationship thing shifting, or suddenly seeing, responsibility in a totally new light.
Yeah.
Or even waking up one day just really wanting to be kinder. It happens.
It absolutely does. And figuring out the world, figuring out ourselves in it, well, that's not a one-and-done deal, is it?
Not at all. It feels like this ongoing, sometimes pretty heavy process. We go through these big internal shifts, these transformations, multiple times.
It's like the ground shifts under your feet, but somehow you find a new way to stand, maybe stronger even.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're looking at a source that uses this really beautiful word for that kind of shift.
Mm-hmm.
Metanoia.
Metanoia. It's Greek, right?
Yeah, it means changing one's mind or purpose. Sort of a fundamental change of heart, mind, self, maybe your whole way of life.
And what's really interesting about the material you brought is how it suggests that no matter what is changing or what you're changing into, these huge psychological shifts, these emotional ones, they tend to follow similar patterns.
Right, there are common themes, common struggles, it seems.
Yeah, common circumstances.
So that's our mission today. We want to walk you through the key insights from this source material and kind of unpack what it suggests you might need to know if you feel like you're in the middle of one of these metanoia moments yourself.
Okay, let's get into it.
So first up, the source often points to the trigger. What actually kicked things off?
Yeah, the first insight is often about relationships. If a particular relationship was the catalyst, the thing that sparked this whole revolution in how you see things.
If it sort of cracked you open.
Exactly. If it did that, the source says it's really crucial to understand that its main job, its purpose as the catalyst, is probably done.
Okay. And there's a really key distinction the source makes here, isn't there? About confusing types of love.
Yes, definitely. It highlights how people can easily confuse that big love, the kind that causes this massive personal earthquake, with forever love.
And the source is pretty clear.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing, at least not necessarily.
Right. It's fascinating how we view intense connections. A relationship can be absolutely monumental, like life-changing because of the inner work it forces you to do or the new perspectives it unlocks.
That's the big love impact.
That's the big love impact. But, and this is the source's point, that huge transformational power doesn't automatically mean the relationship itself is meant to last forever. Sometimes the gift is the transformation itself.
Not necessarily the person staying in your life indefinitely.
Exactly. The enduring gift is the shift within you.
That really reframes things, puts relationships in a different light, almost like forces of nature for growth, separate from how long they last. Okay, so moving from external triggers, what about our own past? How we look back?
Well, the second insight is quite freeing, actually. It suggests you don't need to hold on to anger or disappointment about, old beliefs you had, limiting ones.
Or even how long it took you to see past them.
Precisely. No need to beat yourself up about that.
That feels like it shifts the energy, doesn't it? The source seems to say, don't get bogged down dismantling the past or feeling bad about it.
Exactly. The focus, according to this material, should be on building what's next.
Use that energy looking forward.
Right. Don't waste time ruminating on, oh, I was so naive, or why didn't I see this sooner? The important thing the source stresses is just that the realization happened. Eventually.
Whenever it arrived.
Whenever it arrived. That aha moment is the prize, not how long the race was.
That's such a relief. Less dwelling, more building. Okay, which takes us to maybe the cornerstone insight. The source talks about a really fundamental realization that often underlies these big shifts, sometimes coming out of crisis, sometimes just deep searching.
Yes, this third point is presented as pretty central. It argues that whether you're dealing with a personal catastrophe or just that quiet, deep desire for more understanding, it usually boils down to the same core realization.
And what is that realization?
The source puts it very directly. It's understanding that you, and really only you, are responsible for your life, for your experience of it.
Oof, yeah, that lands heavily, but also kind of empowering.
It is, and the source elaborates on what this means we can't rely on.
Okay. What are those things?
Well, it's pretty explicit. You can't depend on external stuff, your job, money, or relationship, even hitting some major goal. You can't rely on those things to do the real grueling work, as it calls it.
The work of what, exactly?
So finding genuine comfort or peace in a world that's fundamentally impermanent, a world that's always changing.
So my fancy job title, the number in my bank account, finding the one, achieving that big dream. Those external markers won't deliver that deep internal peace.
Not fundamentally, no. The source is clear. Those things can bring joy, security, pleasure, absolutely. But they can't substitute for the internal work needed to feel grounded when life inevitably shifts.
That sense of okayness has to come from inside first.
That's the idea. Only from that internal foundation the material implies can you truly appreciate the external stuff without needing it to hold you up.
That makes so much sense for navigating uncertainty. And speaking of that internal foundation, let's look at point 4. How does the source define loving yourself? It sounds like it has a specific take.
It really does. It defines loving yourself mainly as an action, not just, a feeling.
That's interesting. Different from the usual feel good about yourself vibe.
Right. It actually contrasts it with how we often think about romantic love, especially that initial, ooey gooey emotional rush.
Okay.
But the source asks us to think. When you really, truly love someone else, like deeply commit to them, isn't a huge part of that love shown through consistent actions, day in, day out.
Like the commitments, the effort, choosing their well-being.
Exactly. The choices you make, the tasks you do. So the source suggests self-love is more like that. It's like applying that same active commitment to your own well-being.
So less about passive feeling, more about active doing for yourself.
Precisely. It argues that, feeling good is nice, but the real substance of self-love is in the doing. It's the action of standing up for yourself.
Even when it's tough.
Especially when it's tough. Having the courage to keep going when things are hard. But also, crucially, having the courage to quit something that's harming you or isn't right anymore.
That takes courage, too.
Absolutely. It's about actively choosing things that support your well-being, finding ways to be happy despite life's inherent uncertainty and unreliability. It's defined by what you do, the concrete steps.
Seeing self-love as action, that makes it feel much more tangible, more within reach, which actually leads nicely into the next point, number 5, about navigating that uncertainty.
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward, but also deep. The insight is basically, you don't need all the answers. And honestly, you're never going to have them all anyway.
Huh. Okay, that's a relief. And maybe a bit unsettling, too. So if certainty isn't the aim, what should we be aiming for instead?
The source shifts the focus completely. It suggests it's not about how certain you are, but about your willingness. Your willingness to try anyway, to engage, to move forward despite the unknowns.
And it tackles the biggest unknowns head on,
Right.
The really fundamental ones.
It does. It goes right to the mystery of, where we come from, where we're going, the big questions. The material basically says, look, nobody really knows the absolute truth about that stuff.
Nobody has definitive proof.
Right. And yet it points out, look how much of our society, our cultures, our individual lives are built on teachings and beliefs about that very unknown.
So it's suggesting a lot of what we base our lives on is essentially speculation.
For now, yes, that's the implication. When it comes to those ultimate questions, everything is, in a way, speculation, but then it makes this really crucial distinction. While it might all be speculation, some speculations seem to lead towards a happier, kinder, more peaceful world, a better lived experience, and others just don't.
Okay.
So the point, according to the source, isn't about nailing down the one verifiable truth, because we can't right now. The point is about being willing to live and act in ways that create the best possible reality now.
Based on the speculations that align with things like kindness and peace.
Exactly. Choosing the lens, the story, the speculation that helps you build a better present.
Wow, that's a really profound way to think about belief and faith. It shifts it from needing absolute proof to choosing what works, what creates good. And that seems to connect straight into point 6 about listening to our inner voice amidst all this.
It does. The material suggests you don't necessarily need to sign up for any specific external dogma or belief system someone else hands you.
You don't have to believe any one thing.
Right. But it stresses you do need to develop the ability to listen to what feels true to you in the moment, your own internal sense of resonance.
But there's a balance, isn't there? It's not just follow every feeling blindly.
Definitely not. There's a critical caveat. This internal listening needs to be balanced with enough objectivity, enough awareness to make sure your actions are still rooted in respect and kindness.
Towards yourself and others.
Towards yourself and others.
Yeah.
It's not pure impulse. It's feeling guided by a basic framework of empathy and care.
And the source gives a clue about how to recognize that inner guidance. Like a signal.
It does offer a kind of signal. It says if you're being told or pressured to believe something and it just doesn't sit right deep down, the source uses the phrase at basically every cell of your being.
That's strong a feeling.
Yeah. If it doesn't resonate like that, that feeling of dissonance, that resistance, that's your internal guidance system talking.
Saying what?
Saying, hang on, this isn't quite it. This doesn't align with my deepest truth right now. It's a signal to pause, ask more questions, and trust that inner knowing.
That feels like a really useful compass, especially during times of big change when lots of ideas are flying around. Okay, finally, let's look at the last insight, number 7. This one tackles the tough stuff, the struggles.
Yes, this one is very direct. It basically says, your struggles are what will make you who you become.
And discomfort has a starring role in that process, maybe a surprising one.
A crucial role. The source suggests that discomfort is often the very pressure needed to get us to change, to act differently than we normally would. It's the friction that creates movement.
Right. And when you're in that discomfort, in that struggle, it feels awful, scary because it's unknown, it's not what you planned or wanted.
Exactly. But the material completely reframes those moments.
Yeah.
It argues that the toughest challenges aren't obstacles to your becoming. They are the catalysts for it.
They're the engine of change.
They're the pressure cooker, the forge where the new self gets shaped. These challenges aren't just things to get through. They're actively growing you into someone new.
Someone you might not even be able to imagine right now.
Precisely. The so-called bad things, the hard times, the source describes them not as random bad luck, but as necessary steps, like the essential lead-ins to better things you can't even see yet from where you are.
Wow. Okay, that's a bold statement that eventually you'll actually be grateful for the struggles.
The source seems quite confident about that. It strongly suggests that once you get through it, once you reach what it calls the other side of that transformation, you will look back and be grateful things didn't go the way you wanted them to initially.
And grateful for the struggle itself.
And profoundly grateful for what you went through to get there.
That perspective really shifts how you might approach difficulty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Seeing it as part of the path, not a detour.
Yeah, it connects the hard journey directly to where you're going. The struggle isn't the end of the story. It's a vital chapter towards becoming something more.
So wrapping this up, we've journeyed through this concept of metanoia, this deep personal revolution. We've touched on relationships as potential catalysts.
The importance of that distinction.
The freedom in letting go of judging our past selves. That fundamental bedrock of personal responsibility.
Taking ownership.
Seeing self-love as committed action. Cultivating willingness in the face of uncertainty rather than demanding answers.
Embracing the not knowing.
Listening to that deep inner guidance system. And finally, understanding struggles not just as hardships, but as the actual forge shaping who we become.
And understanding these common threads, these ideas from the source material, can hopefully provide some real insight, maybe even a sense of grounding if you find yourself navigating one of these powerful shifts.
Yeah, a reminder that there's a process at play, even if it feels utterly chaotic in the moment.
Exactly.
All right, so as we finish this deep dive, here's that final thought from the source material we wanted to leave you with, something to ponder. Given that so much of what we build our lives on personally, culturally, is ultimately speculation about the great unknowns. And given that you have this internal guidance system designed to signal what resonates as true deep within you, right down to your core, what does putting those two ideas together suggest about your own willingness? Your willingness to actually act based on what resonates most deeply inside you, in service of creating the best possible reality you can right here, right now, in the life you're actually living.